The war is over. The treaties are signed. The bodies are buried. You've just been conquered by the greatest empire on the planet. And whether you're a Gaul or a Carthaginian, whether your homeland is in the east or the west, life as you know it will never be the same again. Rome is coming to town. Rome conquered with the brute force of her military machine, sweeping entire peoples into her empire. At its height, the empire ruled 50 million people. Greeks, Etruscans, Gauls, Egyptians, and countless others came together as a single civilization. But no one became Roman overnight. Rome had to conquer the hearts and minds of her people, just as powerfully as she won her vast territories. But this conquest was a psychological one, and no effort was spared to win it. In a single year, 80 AD, the Emperor Titus staged the slaughter of 9,000 wild animals. Countless lions, tigers, elephants, and giraffes traveled fantastic distances to die before frenzied audiences. In a single celebration, the Emperor Trajan presented 10,000 gladiators, slaves and criminals doomed to savage combat for the amusement of Romans. The games were a kind of violent propaganda, cruel displays full of drama and excitement.
The games were considered successful the more brutal they were. So a man losing his eyes, or a man losing his tongue, or a woman losing her eyes or her tongue or her fingers or her toes or whatever, that brought the people in the stands to their feet.
The public became addicted to the games, and some ancient thinkers worried about the influence of so much violence on the viewer.
There is nothing more harmful to one's character. When I return from the arena, I am greedier, more aggressive, and more addicted to pleasurable sensations. I am more cruel and inhumane.
But the games were far more than just violent entertainments to thrill the masses. They were also the very essence of Romanness, decanted for all the empire to drink.
I doubt if any emperor sat down and said, let's have some games for good advertising. I don't think they did that, but I think that it worked to that end, in that this showed what we could do. After all, you can't watch a battle. You couldn't watch those Roman troops going off to war because that was a long way away, and there was no television and there were no newspapers to tell you about that. But as much as anything, you could see the construction of the Colosseum and you could see people filling it up, and that would tell you, hey, that's our empire. That's what we're capable of.
From Roman Africa to Britannia to the mysterious East, the message of the Roman arena was the same. Rome was the all-powerful conqueror of all she surveyed. Far-flung lands, exotic beasts, criminals, barbarians, slaves, Christians, all would perish at her command. But the games were just one of the ways Rome successfully seduced, cajoled, and coerced her many subjects. So vast an empire had to find ways to unify its diverse population. Everyone had to know what it meant to be Roman. Rome had a genius for assimilating different peoples into her empire, a skill dating back to her modest beginnings. Once, Rome was just an insignificant village with little influence on the world. 350 BC. Rome had existed as an independent power for more than a century. Her influence was spreading slowly but steadily into the lands surrounding the city. Rome's immediate neighbors, the Etruscans, Samnites, Latins, and others, were the first peoples absorbed into the young empire.
Rome is quite extraordinary in that when it conquered Italy, instead of enslaving Italy, it made the people whom it first conquered its allies. It gave them citizenship. So Rome is the only case in the ancient world in which its citizen body expanded and expanded and brought more and more of its subjects.
What's extraordinary about the people that come into the empire is the extent and the rapidity with which they adopt Roman customs, Roman law codes, Latin as a language. And indeed that becomes the basis of Western civilization for the next 1,000 years.
It didn't hurt that Roman culture had so much to offer. Rome was a republic. Citizens had the right to vote and were protected by a sturdy legal system. Rome's military provided order and protection from invaders. And Rome's economy was thriving thanks to the spoils of war and the riches of nature. One of the secrets to Rome's early success was her very favorable location. Blessed by a gentle climate and a long growing season, Roman territory included some of the most fertile farmland in all of Europe. The Tuscany countryside basks in sunshine 2,400 hours a year, the most of any European region. In the 3rd century BC, most of the land was devoted to growing corn or grain, also wheat, barley, and a coarse cereal called all.
Corn is the staple diet of the vast majority of the Roman population, something like 70 to 80% of the diet. It's the equivalent of a third world country now. You ate a lot of porridge in ancient Rome, most people did, and very little else, only meat very occasionally.
A family might have grown a few vegetables, rosemary and other herbs for flavoring and medicine. If they were lucky, maybe some apples or grapes.
My farm is almost 10 acres, just 15 miles southeast of Rome. I have 1 mule and just a few sheep. This land came from my wife's family, and we work it with my brother and his sons. We grow mostly wheat and some vegetables for ourselves. Several springs past, I planted this small vineyard. This year, for the first time, we hope to make enough wine to sell. If we're successful, we'll plant more next year. If it fails, I won't be able to pay our debts.
At first, Rome was simply a collection of small family farms. But before long, the empire expanded well beyond the limits of a modest city-state and entered the world stage. In 146 BC, when Rome finally conquered her first great enemy, Carthage in North Africa, her destiny changed dramatically. Suddenly a world power, Rome commanded not only Italy, but most of the Mediterranean world. By 140 BC, Rome was still a democratic republic, but now she was also undeniably an empire, controlling more than 250,000 square miles. More than 4 million people lived under Roman rule. The great wars of expansion brought a tidal wave of riches back to Rome, a flood of instant wealth that acted like gasoline on the flames of a young economy. Spoils of war included art, jewelry, gold, and other finery, along with a different kind of commodity, slaves. Now that Rome was a world power, the rules of the game changed dramatically. Conquered peoples were no longer guaranteed citizenship or any benefits of empire. Now, if you lost the war, you were probably taken captive.
If you were conquered by a Roman general and you weren't killed, you would be a slave. And it didn't matter if you were a blonde, blue-eyed German